Hello, Dr. Grafals again. This week we read an important novel, Paul Marshall's Praisesong for the Widow, published in 1983. After you read this novel, you might begin to notice how many of the themes you've been tracking throughout our course will begin to take shape, so that by the time we read our last novel, David Shariandi's Sukuyong, we will be in tune with themes like diasporic identity, cultural memory, the importance of the marvelous for Caribbean identity, and the need to construct a subjective experience that we've been terming Black geographies. We saw, perhaps most vividly in Césaire's Notebook for Return to a Native Land, how Caribbean writers, especially Black Caribbean writers, attempt to discover and construct a diasporic connection to Caribbean space. For instance, although Césaire gestures towards a return to Africa in his poem, we also notice how ultimately the space that the poetic subject desires to return to is not necessarily Africa, but to his homeland in the Caribbean. Right? He desires to return to a renewed homeland that is connected to different spaces traced by the movement of Africans throughout the diaspora. Now, with both Césaire and Carpentier, we also saw the importance of spirituality, often invoked in terms of the marvelous or fantastic in literature, whether it's surrealism with Césaire or the marvelous real with Carpentier. The marvelous provides a more enriched relation to the world. With Carpentier, the marvelous is directly related to African spirituality, especially with Haitian voodoo. Now, with Paul Marshall's Praisesong for the Widow, the themes of our course, whether it's the theme of Caribbean diasporic space or the theme of spirituality as a means of enriching the subject's relation to the world, all begin to come full circle. Briefly put, the novel is about a 64-year-old AV, or Avatar Johnson, who goes on a cruise to the Caribbean with a group of friends. She becomes impressed by an unconscious idea that impels her to disembark from the cruise ship to the island of Grenada. So her journey in this island is going to be the start of a spiritual transformation, a ritual reshaping of the self that will bring together the past, the present, and the future, ultimately through a ritual performance that will take place in the adjacent island of Caricou. It is, in my opinion, perhaps the most uplifting spiritual novel about the African diaspora. And it's up to us to articulate the spiritual significance of what will transpire on this small island. Our author, Paul Marshall, is a U.S. American writer. She was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, to parents from Barbadian descent. She would often visit her extended family in Barbados as she grew up. She was born Valenza Pauline Burke, but at age 12 she changes her name to Paul with a silent E at the end because she was enamored by the African-American poet Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Marshall's life and work is interesting for our purposes because he bridges both Caribbean and U.S. American literature. She bridges Caribbean and U.S. American spaces as well. Her novels like Brown Girl, Brown Stones and The Chosen Place, The Timeless People are about building these spatial bridges. Indeed, some critics even say that Praisesong for the Widow is the last of an unofficial trilogy of works about connecting different spaces of the African diaspora. Together with Praisesong for the Widow, you're also watching Julie Dash's 1991 film, Daughters of the Dust. Dash's film was actually inspired by Praisesong for the Widow and includes the myth that binds both texts together, what scholars term the myth of the flying Africans at Igbo Landing. In one of the sea islands off the coast of Georgia, enslaved Igbo Africans were being shipped to the south to be enslaved. In a location that's now termed Igbo Landing, legend has it that when the Africans saw the shores, their penetrating gazes saw all their future in the U.S. in one instant. After having this penetrating insight, chains and all, the Igbo Africans escaped from the ship and flew back to their homeland. It's a myth that's passed down from the Gullah people of the Sea Islands, who you'll become acquainted with in Julie Dash's film, The Daughters of the Dust. Paul Marshall first read about this myth in a book entitled Drums and Shadows, a 1940 collection of oral folk tales from the Gullah people. In an interview, Marshall states, quote, "That's how Praisesong began, with that folktale," end of quote. So, as interpreters of these texts, we must analyze why this myth becomes central. Both Praisesong for the Widow and Daughters of the Dust are going to be texts that debate about African diasporic spirituality. And they do this by offering expressions of African spirituality that are quite complex and multidimensional. In the film, in Julie Dash's film, you're going to see a character, Mr. Sneed, introduce a kaleidoscope. And as he describes the play of mirrors that makes the kaleidoscope work, I would like you to ponder how this same kaleidoscopic function might be at work in these two texts. Like César's notebook, Praisesong for the Widow is going to involve many different spaces that become woven together. Whether it's Tulsa, South Carolina, Halsey Street in New York City, or the small island of Carriacou near Grenada. Now, our task is to interpret why these spaces come together. What pattern is taking shape? And how does this pattern act as a process of healing for A.V. Johnson? One final note, although Marshall never makes this explicit, the character of Leber Joseph, which A.V. will find in Grenada, is modeled on the Yoruban deity Legba, a Loa found in Afro-Caribbean religions like Voodoo and Santeria. So Legba is a deity of the crossroads, a trickster spirit who acts as the liaison between the material world and the spiritual world. There are many other hidden references and cultural references that I hope you can engage with, like the subtle references to the Anansi spider of West African culture, the spider that represents the weave of stories and traditions. Well, there's more to talk about, but I'll leave the rest up for discussion. Enjoy the novel and the film, and start thinking about that final paper as you read and take notes on Praisesong for the Widow. So looking forward to reading your first essays on César, and looking forward to Friday's discussion. So long.